It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Pelesuji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Aloha, and thanks so much for tuning in here on this first day of February. I'm Ryan Pelesuji, joined by Yunji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. And this morning we catch up with a familiar guest who we always have a lot to talk about.
That's right. Joining us live from his office downtown is Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney Steve Alm. Thank you so much for being here this morning, sir.
Good morning, Yunji and Ryan. Great to be with you again.
You know, the last time you were on, we were talking about a decision made by the Supreme Court here in Hawaii, the Obrero decision. You were very concerned about some unintended or consequences that could come of that. Just so our viewers have a little bit of background, can you tell us about the decision that was made and what did come to pass as a result?
All right. In the Obrero decision, what the Supreme Court essentially did was say that a statute last changed in 1905 said the only way you can bring serious charges is through the grand jury. Well, in 1982, the legislature and then the voters amended the Constitution to say you can also go to a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is like a mini trial where you have a defense attorney and a judge, still the same standard probable cause, but it gives us an option of which way to go. That's what the system was used to doing for the last 40 years. And defense counsel actually like a preliminary hearing better because they get a chance to cross-examine witnesses, see them in person and the like. So this decision, I think, came as a surprise to virtually everybody in the system. And what it said is the preliminary hearing is out. You only can go to grand jury. So at that point, we had 174 cases that were affected by it. And these are all serious felonies, 22 murders and attempted murders, 40 domestic violence felonies, sex assault, kidnapping, and the like. And so we were very concerned about that. But we looked at the Hawaii Rules of Penal Procedure, and they, court rules approved by the Supreme Court, and they allow us, if a case gets dismissed because of a defect in the charge, like now we having gone to a preliminary hearing, we can ask the judge to hold the defendant for a period of time while we bring new charges through the grand jury system in this case. And we didn't know which way the Supreme Court was going to rule on that, whether they'd allow us to or allow the judges to grant that kind of request to hold the defendant pending recharging, or say no. After 2 days in custody, you have to release them. So to our surprise, after ruling one way in Obrero, essentially they reversed course and said, yes, you can ask the judge can hold them for 60 days, and then you'll have a chance to bring charges. So a crisis was averted. We still urge the legislature to move quickly so we can give us the alternative of going to a preliminary hearing again, but at least those 92 defendants we had in custody at OCCC did not get released, and we're able to get them charged again and hold them until their trial.
And so when you talk about the legislature, is there a mechanism, is there a bill, a fix for this moving forward? And what does that look like? And what would that ultimately, what are you asking lawmakers in this legislative session?
Yeah, we're really pleased. The legislature is moving really quickly. Senator Rhodes has a bill. There's already been a hearing on it. We testified. They passed it out of committee unanimously. It's being voted on by the Senate this week. Very shortly, we believe it'll go over to the House. Hopefully, they'll pass it the same way. And what it does is it essentially adds in the preliminary hearing as an alternative to grand jury, which is all we're asking for. And where it really matters are in domestic violence felony cases, because right after some guy has broken his girlfriend's jaw or broken her bones in her face for example, she's willing to testify and will testify at a preliminary hearing. 6 months later or a year later, when a trial comes up, maybe feelings have changed, or she's too scared of the person and flees the jurisdiction or doesn't want to testify. Well, because there was a chance to cross-examine her at the preliminary hearing, even if she's not there, we can proceed with the case by introducing a transcript of that testimony. So we can still protect the public from these dangerous guys, but we would not be able to do that with grand jury. We can do that with a preliminary hearing. So we want to get back to the option of a preliminary hearing as soon as possible, and the legislature is really helping with that.
Yeah, given the speed at which you think this is progressing, how soon could you see a fix actually on the books?
I think in weeks.
Okay, good to hear. I want to move on to Waikiki. Safe and Sound launched in the fall, around September. We've spoken to the mayor about the progress there. Also, Mufi Hanneman was on this program from HLTA talking about the investment from local businesses to help to support that program. How do you think it's going? And sort of on a broader scale, how do you measure success in whether or not, how do we know whether or not it's working?
Well, partly, without question, there's a lot of activity going on there. The police have made like 500 arrests. We are prosecuting people. We are trying to get the courts to put more misdemeanor cases. And the bulk of the arrests are these quality of life crime, misdemeanor kind of crime there. Assaults, terroristic threatening, disorderly conduct, urinating in public, drinking in public. And we, those are the things that can tear a community down. So we're doing a lot of cases with HPD. We're asking the court to put more people on probation for misdemeanors, because then we can ask for a geographic restriction as a condition of probation. That's only happened in a couple of dozen cases, and we would like it in more to help clean the place up. But there's no question there have been some horrific crimes there. That dates back when I first started in this office. Some woman in a bar patted a person's, this guy's blow-up Godzilla doll, and he stomped her to death. I mean, it was horrific. Peter Carlisle handled the case. I think the guy got convicted of manslaughter. But these are challenging areas. That's why we're doing Safe and Sound there. That's why we're doing Weed and Seed in Chinatown and in Waipahu and in Ewa Beach. We're doing it in places that have had challenges. And so we can work closely with HPD and with the community to make it better. So it's going to take some time, but it's already, when you talk to certain people, it's already getting, cleaned up essentially in a number of ways. The city has been a great partner in this as far as providing more money for cleanups, for essentially putting a business in that last pavilion. And I think a lot of people are noticing better changes. There's no question we've had some tough cases there, some murders there. We're working with HPD to hold people accountable. But the beauty of Safe and Sound, just like Weed and Seed, is we're going to be there next week. We're going to be there next month. We're going to be there next year. It's going to keep getting better and better.
One of the unique things about this program specific to Waikiki was that geographic restrictions. And I want to go a little bit more into detail with that, because there has been some talk. We spoke to the mayor, and he said he would like to see more of those geographic restrictions. You said only a few have gone through. Why aren't we seeing more of those geographic restrictions being placed on those individuals who commit crimes in Waikiki that maybe aren't falling under that purview and not being banned, if you will, or restricted from Waikiki? Right. Why aren't we seeing more of those?
Well, the problem is, if somebody gets arrested, say in Waikiki, for disorderly conduct, and they don't have any money and they can't make bail, they're going to be held at HPD overnight in the cell block. They go to court the next morning. The typical consequence is they plead guilty, they get credit for time served, and they walk out of the courtroom. So there's no consequence beyond that. And they're not put on probation. If they were put on probation, they could get services. They could get mental health services. They could get substance abuse services. And as a condition of probation, we can ask for a geographic restriction. But they have to be placed on probation first. And the judiciary is just not doing that. And we don't know why.
I'm interested, we talk about this geographic restriction for Waikiki, but are there considerations of adding geographic restrictions to other areas? You did mention Chinatown, and I do want to talk about weed and seed in
Yeah.
more depth, but we do see, a similar pattern in that neighborhood as well. Is that something you would advocate for Chinatown too?
We started Weed and Seed a year and a half ago in Chinatown, working with the seed part that was already there, and that Weed and Seed Hawaii Inc. had worked on. But we had the same frustration there, not being able to get geographic restrictions. And the reason it's particularly frustrating is when we did Weed and Seed the first time in Chinatown and Kali'ipalama 20 years ago, the court granted it every single time we requested it, because there's something about that area that gets the person in trouble. And so it's even better for that person. Maybe their drug connection is there. Maybe their low-life friends are there. And so it even helps those folks to, not to be there. And they grant it every time. Now, we don't even ask for it if the person lives in the area, if they work in the area, or they're getting services like a mental health therapist or something. But in other cases, we would ask for it. And the courts have not been putting people on probation and granting that, both in Waikiki and in Kali'ipalama and Chinatown. And it's very frustrating.
One of the things that we are seeing, though, in Waikiki and in Chinatown is the effects of course, mental illness and substance abuse. Those types of things often lead to these criminal activities or the defecation of businesses in the area.
Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about when we last spoke was the SUDAFAST program, I believe. If you can go into more detail about that, or a refresher about what that program is and how things are going with regards to this specific program to deal with these types of individuals.
Sure. We knew Chinatown, compared to the last time, had a much more severe homeless problem. And, homelessness is not a monolithic group of people. It's husband and wife who've lost their jobs, living in their car, all the way down to what we see in Chinatown is people sleeping on the streets, often in their own waste, really in sad conditions. And we know in order to help them not only get off the street, but stay off the street, they've got to get clean and sober, and they've got to get help for their mental health. So we started a program called SUDAFAST, which stands for Substance Use Disorder Assessment -FAST. So when they get arrested for, say, drug possession, they're at OCCC because they can't make bail. Now we're getting them assessed and then placed into treatment as soon as possible. In a regular situation, they'd get arrested, go to OCCC. If they can't, a week later at arraignment, if a judge releases them, they're going to go right back to the street. But if the judge holds them, they're going to sit for months until they plead guilty, get put on probation, and then an individual probation officer is going to go down there and help them try to get into a treatment program. What we're doing is trying to do it at the front end so they can get an assessment and then get placed into treatment. And it's a very good system. I think it's the way it ought to be done. The public defenders would like to expand it to the entire island. I don't think we're there yet. Things have slowed down as far as the number of people being referred, because most of the homeless folks in Chinatown that are sleeping on the street have been arrested and are no longer there. There's always going to be new people coming in occasionally, but a lot of those folks have been referred. In Waikiki, we're finding that there were a number of drug cases, but they were more people selling drugs, like down by those pavilions. They have been arrested. They're not part of this. If they're selling drugs, we're not trying to get them out right away. They're going to be in jail. In certain cases, depending on their backgrounds, we may be trying to send them to prison, but that's being handled a different way. There aren't as many of the homeless folks that are like lying on the sidewalk at that part of Waikiki to get arrested for these drug possession charges.
You mentioned that this program, the Weed and Seed program, is happening in Chinatown, but also Waipahu and Ewa Beach. Can you tell us a little bit about what the challenges are, as it goes into each community, how they're different, and how you tailor the program to suit the needs of those communities?
Right. Well, and you're absolutely right. Each community is different, and it's run based on what communities think their problems are. They know their community better, right? I live in Kaimuki. I don't live in Chinatown. I don't live in Waikiki. I don't live in Waipahu or Ewa Beach. So one of the biggest differences is that many of the arrests are people that live in that area. So we will not be making the same kind of effort to have geographic restrictions for nearly as many people in those two communities. If they live somewhere else and they're going in the community to cause trouble, then we will ask for it. But that's a good example that many of the folks that are going to get arrested actually live there. So we're not going to ask for it. Now, both those communities have started off slowly and are ramping it up. We're in discussions with them to have more arrests be in the umbrella of weed and seed, because when that happens, we try to get bail set higher, and the cases are handled on an expedited basis. So that's really helpful. One thing that's been helpful, particularly in Waikiki, is there are some people that just steal every day. They go into stores, and it causes danger for the clerks. And so what can happen is if they have a history of a number of property offenses, even if they're misdemeanors, we can then charge the person with a habitual property offense, which is a Class C felony. And so we have done that for a number of people. The first one, to give you an example of the way the system works, Lawrence Smalls had 161 convictions, mostly for misdemeanors and petty misdemeanors. He never got more than a few days in jail. So the court system was not scary to him at all. So he got arrested as a habitual property offender. He's in OCCC now. He has to do at least a year. That's part of the statute. But we discovered that he'd always go in to steal alcohol. And so he needs to go and get help for his drinking, because unless he takes care of that, he's going to keep on stealing. And a number of the folks we found who are these habitual property offenders who go to steal every day, often multiple times a day, many are homeless and many have drug and alcohol or mental health problems. So we're going to try to get them help. There's one woman, first name Yolanda, who goes into stores and is, makeup stores or Target, and steal hundreds of dollars worth of things just to sell it and to do it with offense. We're going to try to send her to prison. But most of the other folks we're discovering are having drug and alcohol, mental health problems. We're going to try to get them help, because unless they deal with those underlying issues, they're never going to stop this illegal behavior.
And just quickly to wrap this up, as we talk about these, weed and seed and Safe and Sound programs, when you look at, as Yanji had mentioned, just how do you measure success? At what point do you kind of stake the claim, all right, mission accomplished, we've done what we want to do, and this program actually sunsets? I mean, how do you foresee this as something that just will continue to be ongoing throughout time, or is there a certain plateau or a benchmark that you're striving to achieve that would essentially end this program?
I think we're looking at several years. When we did Weed and Seed the first time, the year before we started, there were 10,000 arrests in Chinatown and Kali'ipalama. The year we finished, there were 2,300. And so I think you have to keep momentum going, maybe not quite as intense. And there isn't as much of a need. If you can reduce crime like that, then the whole point is, if you weed out the criminal activity, then all the seeding component, the community activities have a chance to flourish. And when they're flourishing, you have less crime. So you have to keep your eye on it, keep doing some stuff. But I think we're talking a number of years. That realistically, that's what it's going to take.
I'm interested, when you look out at the landscape of what's happening in our community, do you feel like things are getting better or worse? Because you see, you see everything in a way that the public does not. So when you look at the broader trends, how do you feel like we're doing as a community when it comes to public safety?
Well, I think the challenge is during COVID, crime was down about 30%. And that's not a surprise. Stores were shuttered. People were at home more. People weren't out on the street doing things. But with that, COVID receding somewhat, people are out and about more. So crime has increased. And I think it's getting back to pre-COVID levels. And that's not acceptable. We got to try to stop it. But I think because it's written, people just feel, people just feel less safe. And there've been some, a lot of attention, because there have been some murders, other things. The actual murder rate in 2022 is about what it was pre-COVID. So at the beginning of the year, it looked more busy, but that slowed down as the year went on. One of the things that we know has been a crime reducer is Hope Probation. And we're having real problems with getting the judiciary to do Hope the way it ought to be done. In fact, there was a hearing yesterday. We ended up introducing a bill at the legislature to have the legislature trying to tell the judiciary, go back to this program that has a 50% reduction in recidivism. It's baffling to us why they're not doing it, because at the hearing yesterday, and there's another one this afternoon at 3 in the Senate on Hope Probation, we had folks that had been in Hope before, and they talked about how on regular probation, you can game the system. There's no immediate consequences, whereas in Hope, there are. And we think the way they're doing it, regular probation, I hate to say it, and we have good caring POs, but probation officers, but regular probation is really a failed system. More than 50% of people on regular probation commit a new crime. In Hope Probation, women that are in Hope fail at probation and go to prison fully 50% less often than if they're in regular probation. Native Hawaiians, 42% less often. And part of that is because you have immediate consequences, jail consequences, but it's only a couple of days. We're trying to do something really difficult. We're trying to change people's thinking to change their behavior. And this is all about public safety. So right now, sex offenders, domestic violence offenders, if they violate, there are no immediate consequences. So say a sex offender had molested a kid. He's going to be ordered to stay away from Fun Factory, a place where there are kids. Well, if they go there now, there are no immediate consequences. In Hope, there would be. People that test positive for drugs now and had said they admit using, they're not held in custody. They're not arrested as they would be in Hope. They're allowed to leave. And the research shows that people in Hope get arrested for new crimes 55% less often than regular probation. And that's what it's become. Hope Probation has been diminished. It's now regular probation. That means our office is going to have to, not only are people getting victimized more often, but our office is going to have to prosecute a lot more people because Hope Probation is not being run the right way. And my number one job is public safety. And that is being compromised right now.
I want to switch gear to another topic that has made a lot of headlines and a lot of people are talking about. And of course, that is the gun permit issue, and it's ties to conceal and carry. Do you believe that there should be a statewide standard on restricted areas where guns are allowed? I wanted to get your thoughts on where things are headed now with the gun permitting issues that each county is having to tackle.
Right. Well, I know the Attorney General's office, they're working with the county, all the county police departments. And I know they're concerned because people travel between different islands. Each island is different, but it may be one of those situations that, having a statewide system would make some sense. What we're concerned about is how this is going to actually play out when people are carrying more concealed weapons. I think the people that are likely to get these permits are law-abiding citizens that have permits right now. They have a gun at home. They'd like to be able to carry one in public. What we're concerned about is just the unknown, because if there's a road rage case right now that it involves yelling or maybe, people exchanging blows, that's a different story. We hope that doesn't escalate into gunshots. By the same token, if somebody is not going to go, can't carry a gun in a specified area, a sensitive place like a government building or a church or a school, I hope people think about where they're going to go that day and leave the gun at home if they're going to go there, because they're not going to take it in. They may leave the gun in the car, and that could get broken into, and somebody could get it. We have a lot of car break-ins. We don't want people getting guns that way. And we always urge people, be a responsible gun owner, get a gun safe or get a trigger lock so people don't use it, and commit suicide, or little kids don't get it and play around with it and end up shooting each other. Those are tragedies we can avoid. So we really would urge people to be as responsible as they can, in the home with the guns.
You know, broad strokes for this legislative session. You did mention at the top of our program that it sounds like an Obrero fix is in the works. So I know that you'll be tracking that and working hard on that. But you did also mention that you're going to be going to another Hope probation hearing this afternoon. Would you say that that is really the focus of your legislative work? You know, if there is legislative work, if you
Yeah.
will, this session, or what are you hoping to see from lawmakers when it comes to your office?
Well, we would hope the, you know, legislature would look at the data and research, because we should be making criminal justice decisions based on that, not on anecdote or hearsay, or we've always done it this way. And a thing like Hope does save a tremendous amount. We don't need legislation for it. We would just hope the judiciary would look at the data and research, and the fact that in 32 states and a territory, Guam, are doing versions of Hope now. Some are doing it well, some are doing it poorly, but we cannot control another place. And so, when people bring up the fact that, hey, it doesn't work everywhere, the fact that they can't do it somewhere else, it's because they're not following our model. So we would hope that would get passed. But we also are trying to get a working group together, because I guess this won't surprise people, but when HPD arrests somebody and they put in all the information, when the case comes to our office, our clerical staff has to put in all the same information. The computer systems in each of these agencies do not talk to each other. So we raised this with Mayor Blangiardi. He loved the idea. Governor Green's on board to get an effort going so all the computer systems, police, prosecutors, judiciary, public safety, Hawaii Paroling Authority, can all talk to each other and save time and money. So, we're pushing for that to happen as well.
We are almost out of time, but before we let you go, I wanted to just allow you a final thought here this morning. There's still a lot of concern in the community about public safety. Some people saying that things continue to get worse. And you mentioned that public safety is the number one thought and thing that your office is trying to tackle. What is your message this morning to those out there who feel that there is more crime and things are more violent out there, and just your overall final word this morning?
Well, thank you. I think just know we're doing our level best here to charge people, hold them accountable, work with our partners at the police department to, keep Hawaii as safe as possible. But part of that is, and whether it's weed and seed, safe and sound, citizens are an important part of this because they see what's going on. So I would encourage people, they see illegal activity, call 911. Support the police department, support the prosecutors, because if you see something and can be a witness, we urge you to be willing to testify in court. You may not have to if the defense knows you're there to testify, but that would help. Take part in a neighborhood watch. If you see something wrong, report it. We're all in this together, and we are doing our level best to protect public safety. And we realize it feels a little unsafe. And I think it's because things have, crime has risen, but it was down 30% during the pandemic. But we are trying to use strategies like the habitual offender law and like nuisance abatement. The legislature passed a law making gambling a felony now to participate in these game rooms. So we know residents are terrified and hate having a game room, hate having a drug house. We're trying to go after both. So we're doing whatever we can to promote public safety. And we really appreciate it when people can call into the police or call into us and tell us where you see illegal activity so we know where to focus.
Thank you so much for that message this morning and for all that you shared with us. Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney Steve Alm, we always appreciate your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Great to see you, folks.
Thank you. Always a lot of energy from Mr. Alm there, and you hear that they are working on a number of fronts to try to encourage public safety in our community, really lobbying the legislature to try to do that fix to the Obrero decision. He said that a crisis was averted. They did find a workaround that they are using for now, but they would like to see a permanent fix. And also talking, Ryan, about really trying to push the judiciary to use Hope probation and reinstate that program, because he said it would make a huge difference. Pretty striking to hear the prosecuting attorney of the city and county of Honolulu basically saying that traditional probation in our community is broken. Oh, you're muted.
You would think we have that figured out by now, but still muting issues. But you heard from it as well, just the overall push for the legislative activity to help with that. We also got an update from what's happening in Waikiki with the Safe and Sound program, talking about the number of arrests that are happening and some of the challenges that continue to exist in the area, but that they are continuing to work hard to make sure that both elements of really the entire program is not only finding those individuals who break the law, but also making sure that they are laying the foundation for programs and working with the community partners to ensure that these types of situations and these types of environments are safe for the community. One thing that we did also expand upon and that he talked about was those geographical restrictions to those offenders who in Waikiki make offenses are not allowed back into the area, calling it once again for more of that. And again, this is something that we've heard the mayor also call for. A big part of this Safe and Sound program was that geographic restriction and not allowing these repeat offenders back into these parts of the community. And so we'll see if there is more efforts there to ramp up to not allow those individuals back in there, and ultimately how the program will continue to expand in, again, a different name in Weed and Seed in Chinatown, but the other areas around the island.
Right, and we've heard that in the comments from our viewers before, to say, why is all the attention being placed on Waikiki? What about in my neighborhood? And now we are understanding that Weed and Seed is being expanded beyond Chinatown to also include Waipahu and Eva Beach, and that the program is being tailored to suit the needs of those different communities. You wouldn't necessarily have the same level, he said, of geographic exemptions or restrictions, if you will, but saying that they want to try to get those communities as much help as possible as well. So always really interesting to hear from him and all the work that they are doing. Also got an update on Suda Fast, which is a program to try to get people the help they need when it comes to substance abuse and mental health issues. His office is tackling so much. Overall, he did acknowledge that, public safety is a real issue in our community. Crime is up. That is largely due to the pandemic restrictions being lifted. We don't have those stay-at-home orders. People are out and about, and that can lead to some trouble. But his office is doing what he calls their level best to try to keep people behind bars if needed and get them into programs when appropriate. So always great to hear from him. On Friday, we will be checking in with newly sworn in Mayor Mr. Bisson, Richard Bisson, on the island of Maui. Maui having some breaking news in the last few days, just finding out about 700 gallons of diesel fuel spilled atop Haleakala.
Yeah, an issue that, of course, will draw many concerns from area residents as well as the Native Hawaiian community. We'll get an update from him, as well as how he's adjusting into this new role as mayor. Of course, just getting sworn in a few months ago, getting his cabinet together, putting his budget together, and addressing some of those issues that Maui residents continue to deal with tourism as well as infrastructure. So a lot to catch up with the new mayor of Maui. We hope to see you right back here on Friday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.